Hello and welcome to Half Court Press Podcast. I am Wilson Moore, joined as always by Jon Walker. We've got a pretty busy last week in Creighton and Nebraska basketball to break down and look ahead. Jon, how are you doing?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I think we've officially, it's the end of January. Everybody's probably failed their New Year's resolution by now. And we finally hit that time of a new year where you're no longer sluggish, I think. We're starting to hit our groove. Um, as are the Jays and the Huskers, it seems.
Yeah,
So yeah, how are you, Wilson? Hopefully
I'm
you're in
doing
that same
well.
groove.
Yeah. I think we follow a similar timeline to the teams we cover.
Yeah.
At the time they want to be playing their best basketball, we want to be writing our best stories.
Yeah.
So we're all kind of getting ready for the stretch run here, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. No, it'll be fun. Like I said, it's about that time. I recently booked a trip to go cover the St. John's game at
Right.
the end of February. And I was like, that is a month from now. That's it. Just
Yeah,
4 simple weeks.
yeah,
Nuts. Nuts. Where did January go? 2024 is flying by
it
already.
is just zooming past us. Well, Jon, I think we can start with probably the most, each of these teams played two games this week. I think we can all agree on what the wildest, weirdest one of those four was, and that
Yeah.
is Creighton's triple overtime win over Seton Hall.
Yeah, it just felt like it was never gonna end. The players have said that too since then when we've talked to them. But it really felt like Syracuse UConn from what 2012, 13, somewhere
It was
right in
before
there.
that. It was Johnny Flynn
Yeah,
was on that
yeah.
Syracuse team.
It genuinely just felt like that game where you were like, okay, we're going to a fourth, fifth, sixth overtime. Um, and then I really thought it was over when Creighton went down five within the first couple of minutes of the third overtime because I was just like 5 points in
I
a
mean,
game like
down
this.
five in overtime. Like that's
Yeah, yeah. I was like 5 points in a game like this. Neither team has really pulled away from each other in overtime and really for regulation for that matter. I was like 5 points seems like a lot bigger than 5 points in this very moment. And then Trey Alexander just kind of took over, and Stephen Ashworth hit a couple of clutch free throws and a big three, and Baylor Shireman did what he does, and the Jays escaped with a 97-94 win in triple overtime. Only the program's second ever triple overtime game. Fun fact.
yeah, that is a
So,
fun fact.
yeah,
Didn't like Alexander and Kalkbrenner and those guys all play like 50
dude.
minutes or something? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah. Baylor Shireman never left the floor.
Oh
Um,
God.
Like, yeah, think about that. He played a full 40, which is become a regular occurrence from him. Um, but imagine your legs being absolutely gassed after a full 40 minutes, as is. And then you go to overtime and you're mentally thinking like, I can get through another 5 minutes. And then you go to a second overtime and you're like, man, I could get through another 5 minutes. And then you get to a third one and it just is, I'd imagine it's exhausting. But
That's almost another half of basketball right there.
yeah. That's the crazy thing. And then, they kind of got caught with the scheduling wise with the short week. You either play on Tuesday or Wednesday in the Big East. And this of all weeks was one of the weeks that Creighton got a Tuesday game, of course. So they had just a little over 72 hours of rest after 55 minutes. Yeah, Baylor played 55, Ryan Kalkbrenner played 54, and Trey Alexander played 53 of a possible 55 minutes. So ridiculous. And Stephen Ashworth played 49, if I remember right, 48 or 49. So I mean, four of the five starters were just reeling on the plane ride back, I'd guess. But they said they weren't tired, and I kind of showed on Tuesday when they beat Xavier.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I watched a little bit of basketball last night, and I was shocked that Illinois went on the road and lost to Northwestern in overtime. But that makes Nebraska's win over this past weekend look uber good, I would think, considering they, if you want to go the transitive property or
Yeah.
whatever, their win, they technically beat Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure I haven't looked at like the at the net today, but I
Hmm.
would guess Northwestern jumped a couple
Yeah,
spots.
yeah,
I mean that win is pretty firmly quad two. I was looking last night,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean that's just Northwestern keeps winning. That's good for Nebraska until they play Nebraska again.
Right.
Yeah, but that game was one Nebraska really, really needed to have. Coming off of two road losses in which the Huskers did not play well at all.
Um,
There are losses when teams play well. Iowa and Rutgers were not two of those games
no,
for Nebraska. They didn't play well in
no.
either of them. Rutgers, they just kind of got beaten up physically under the basket, and they needed to rebound, and they really needed to kind of hold serve at home
Yeah.
because when you're a team that's 0-4 on the road in Big Ten play, which Nebraska is, you've got to take care of business at home
Yeah.
because you have such a just thin margin for error at that point. And
It kind of seems like that's been the entire Big Ten this year. Like,
yeah,
pick the home team,
yeah,
whoever it is on any night, even if they're hosting Purdue, pick the home team.
yeah.
That seemed like the Big Ten so far.
Northwestern has beaten Purdue and Illinois at home now this year.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, yeah, yeah, but man, that I'm gonna be honest, the Northwestern game, I know it just happened on Saturday. It feels like a weirdly long time ago for yeah,
yeah.
that was the day Nebraska introduced or honored the 93-94 Big Eight tournament team. Eric Piatkowski hit a shot from half court at
Hmm.
halftime. And yeah, Nebraska did a really good job on Boo Buie that game. They've and made me realize they've generally done a good job on those elite perimeter scorers. Tyson Walker they handled pretty
Hmm.
well. It's usually kind of a committee of Jamarcus Lawrence and Sam Hoiberg and Bryce Williams kind of taking turns on them. And yeah, just um, yeah, Nebraska took care of business, got a good win, and one that it really, really needed after the week before.
Yeah. Did they get Gary back for that game? I couldn't
No,
remember.
they didn't. And yeah, I
That.
don't even know if we've yeah, we haven't even that happened since our last podcast. Yeah, I guess that's the other big news
Hmm.
for Nebraska in the past week plus is they found out Juwan Gary won't be out for an extended period of time, which is huge considering how bad that injury
Yeah,
looked and how much
yeah,
he means to the team. Just the grit and the toughness that he provides. That is kind of it's a unique skill set. It's a thing that either someone has or they don't.
yeah, yeah.
What he does, and it looked like an Achilles on the TV. I think that was the initial fear. They said like on the bench, the athletic trainer said Achilles looked intact, but they wanted to get a scan. They got the scan the next day, and it was a calf strain. He wasn't he's missed 2 games since. Everyone knew right away he was going to miss the Northwestern game. He was suited up.
Right.
He warmed up before Ohio State and just wasn't quite ready to go. I imagine we'll get an update from Fred tomorrow when we talk to him. But he seems to be by all indications Gary is trending in the right direction, and that's huge for Nebraska. They try to make
Yeah.
this. stretch run push to make the tournament for the first time in 10 years.
Yeah, that's nuts. 10 years, 10 years. I mean, they're gonna need it, but kind of exactly like you said, like the swagger, the attitude that he brings to this team, like you have it or you don't, and it really has nothing to do with Juwan Gary as a basketball player. Like that's who Juwan Gary is.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, as Wilson told in a story about a month ago, he's just a dog. Like
dog. Yeah,
how however you want to cut it, he is a dog. And when he's on the floor, that shows for Nebraska.
yeah,
Now I'd be lying if I said I've watched every Nebraska game this year, but the ones that I have, it is a notable difference in energy when Juwan Gary is on the
yeah,
floor and when Juwan Gary is not on the floor. I genuinely think that they still have Casey Tominaga, have Rienk Mast, but when you get in just a straight up bar fight, which is usually what you get in one, the Big Ten, two, the NCAA tournament, you need a guy on your team like Juwan Gary.
yeah,
To pick up a stool or no, or hit somebody over the back with a chair, in a basketball sense.
yeah,
And he does that every single time he's on the floor. If he's scoring, if he's not scoring, like it doesn't matter. So yeah, that's massive for them, really, that it was just a cash strain, because I think everybody thought
yeah,
the worst,
yeah,
because of how it initially looked. You see those non-contacts and you're like, oh, buddy.
yeah,
So, kind of good for them. Obviously good for Juwan Gary that they kind of avoided everything on that front.
yeah. Yeah, and just one last
Yeah.
point to that. He's an energy guy, and this Nebraska team, like, there's a noticeable difference when they kind of have that extra burst of energy.
Yeah.
Like I,
Yeah.
I think of it in the opening minutes of the Purdue game, Gary dove for a loose ball, and you could see just how fired up everyone was on the bench. And I thought of this a lot the Ohio State game, which we'll get to later, but they had that sort of energy in the Ohio State game. And this is purely anecdotal, but so I would have to go back and rewatch every game. But I think Nebraska is undefeated when they have like at least four guys like hit the deck at some point throughout the game. Like just when they're playing like that, when they're diving for loose balls, they have an extra, they have an extra gear to them. And Gary's a big part
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the same thing that, Greg McDermott has told his team oftentimes is we've got a chance to be pretty special. And it's because of stuff like that. One of the things he had mentioned that they were at UNLV, which seems like a lifetime ago now. Getting clobbered, and with down double digits, less than 2 minutes left in the game, Baylor Shireman was diving on the floor for a loose ball. What player is going to do that down 14 with 2 minutes left? And Greg McDermott had just kind of told them, like, if we're gonna be special, if we're gonna have a chance to be special, it's because of stuff like that. So you would think that doesn't only apply to Creighton, right? Like, and that right there is what Juwan Gary brings to Nebraska. So, it's a pretty big deal. But
Yes.
mm-mm-mm.
Speaking
He's an
of
Iron
Creighton,
Man. Go ahead, go
no,
ahead.
yeah,
Oh, I was gonna say Juwan Gary's an Iron Man.
yeah,
Baylor Shireman's an Iron Man. So is Ryan Garner and Trey Alexander, and they proved that on Tuesday night.
yeah,
Like I said, short turnaround. All in terms of the Big East, short turnaround. Playing right back on Saturday, exhausted. You get as much rest as you can, and for a half, it seemed that Creighton played the part of a team that had just played a game and a half 3 days earlier. Um, Came out with an initial jolt, and then Xavier just hit tough shot after tough shot after tough shot. Davion McKnight, Desmond Claude were really the two that just could not miss with a hand in their face. I genuinely couldn't believe some of the shots they put up, and then they connected on them. I think there was one point where Davion McKnight, a 6'4" guard maybe, was driving into the lane, met 7'1" Ryan Kalkbrenner and floated it over him. And I was like, that never okay, that never works. And it dropped. And so, that was kind of what it was that was kind of the night that it looked like Creighton and maybe more so Xavier was going to have on Tuesday. Baylor Shireman had a quiet first half. Trey Alexander popped off. Ryan Kalkbrenner kind of did his usual to help. And then Baylor Shireman just kind of popped off in the second half, scored 15 of his 20 points after the break, went 4 or 5 from 3 in the second, hit 2 separate daggers, if that's a thing. Hit one to put Creighton up 7 with 4 minutes left or something like that. I think it was 4 minutes. And then Xavier got back in it, got as close as 74-76, and he cashed another one. And that was with just under 2 minutes left. I thought the first one was the dagger. I was like, okay, up 7, 4 minutes. And then, Xavier, again, just tough shot. All fell, of course. And Baylor Shireman woke up, and Trey Alexander continued to do what he did down the stretch. I think he had 27, 9, and 4, something like that. His best game statistically since last February. That's kind of the resolve, the performance that the Jays needed. It's one that they got, and dare I say, ahead of Saturday's matchup with DePaul, which is recently fired Tony Stubblefield. The Jays have survived a 4-game gauntlet, really. When you think back, St. John's got bludgeoned at UConn. I think the final score is by 14. It wasn't as close as that. And then eked one out at Seton Hall, and metrically, Xavier is a better team than their record would suggest. So, all things considered, a 4-game gauntlet that the Jays have made it out of ahead of Saturday's matchup with DePaul, which is still winless in the Big East. So,
I mean, is DePaul going to win a game in the Big East?
If Ed Cooley gives up on Georgetown like he did the other night. No, I don't think he gave up. I think Ed Cooley's frustrations are becoming probably a little bit more and more visible. Year one of a rebuild, But if DePaul's going to win a game, it would have to be against Georgetown. They played Marquette for their first game after they fired their coach. Parted ways, I'm sorry. And they looked like they had a little juice. Didn't know what to expect. That either goes one or two ways. You absolutely crumble and you fold, or that can galvanize you. I don't know if everybody there was against Tony Stubblefield. I don't know. But it could be one of those things that either crumbles you or galvanizes you. And they looked a little juiced against Marquette last night. We're down almost 20 a bunch of times and never let it get any worse than that. I think ended up losing by 13 still, but it looked like a team that wants to win a game. Will they? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not all too sure. So we'll see.
I don't know, something I thought of to your point, about how Creighton looked kind of a step slow coming out was how demoralizing is that, for Seton Hall, or would it have been for Creighton to lose that game? You play 55 minutes of basketball and don't even come away with a win. That would have to just be brutal.
Dude, it's at that point, it doesn't even because it already is what I'm about to say, but not really to the extent. It's already physically draining. if you lose that, you are emotionally drained.
Yeah.
Now I don't think it mattered for either one of these teams. I think Seton Hall clobbered whoever they played last night. No, they lost. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was thinking of St. John's. Yeah, Seton Hall actually did lose. 67-63 to Providence. I believe that is Providence's first conference win. Oh no, because they just beat DePaul. That was their so the DePaul win on last Wednesday was their first win without Bryce Hopkins. But if you want to talk about actually beating another team, the Seton Hall at Seton Hall was their first win since losing Bryce Hopkins. I mean, it just Seton Hall shot 32%, 31 from three. Yeah, I mean, just had 12 turnovers. It's pretty sloppy, all things considered. Those are the types of things that happen when you play a game and a half. So I think, yeah. Greg McDermott had said it after the Xavier game. He said, if anybody ever wants to question this team's toughness again, you're barking up the wrong tree. I think the last 10 days or whatever it is have probably proved that. After the St. John's win, it was like, people have accused us of not being able to win a mud fight, and we've done that. So they did that against St. John's. Whatever you want to call the Seton Hall win, because I don't think mud fight, as we've adopted here on the Half Court Press Pod, that wouldn't justify it. I don't even know.
A marathon
straight up. I don't even know. You're like a marathon of a fist fight. Would that do it? I don't know. In comes Juwan Gary with the bar stool. I'm not sure.
A 12-round boxing match, but then at the end, they're both beaten up, and then the ref's like, "Oh no, we actually have 3 more rounds."
We have 3 more rounds actually. We're in fun fact, we're not leaving here until one of you knocks each other out. Essentially, it's like we're gonna finish this fight, and it's nuts. And then kind of got in a similar situation, maybe not in that type of back and forth slugfest, but for sure where they needed their resolve and they got it even after the Seton Hall game. To be able to bounce back and beat Xavier in the second half on Tuesday. So we'll see. Those are the types of wins that, for a team that's so built on its shot making and has struggled with that in Big East play, for them to be able to get the St. John's win and the Seton Hall win and win the way they did against Xavier, those are the things where you start to tell yourself, and it's probably more important for guys like Mason Miller and Stephen Ashworth, guys who haven't been mainstays in the starting lineup until this year. It's probably more important for them, but it's really important for Creighton to just see, like, we can do this. Like, if we get matched up with a really athletic, lengthy team that puts on ball pressure, that's kind of been Creighton's kryptonite. If we get matched up with one of those in the second round of the tournament in March, we've been in enough slugfest where we'll throw the last blow. That's kind of the big takeaway. I know it's only January, but things like that travel. Things like that will stick with you. So Nebraska will be looking to get one of those, or we're looking to get one of those against Ohio State.
Yeah. Nebraska beat an Ohio State team that I think all year long hasn't really been has been less than the sum of its parts. Like Ohio State should just be better than it is. Like, I mean that, they've got some dudes. Bruce Thornton is one of the better point guards in the conference. Jamison Battle is solid. That Ohio State just, like I said, hasn't added up to the sum of its parts. But last night, regardless of anything Ohio State did, last night was their last night. That was 2 nights ago. This is what this time of the year does to you. But
I'm telling you, it's the late January thing.
Tuesday night was the Rienk Mast game, and it was it started. He knocked down a three, and that was just he needed to see a three go down in the
Yeah.
worst way. Dating back the past 3, 4, 5 games, he that was part of what he what he was advertised as being able to do when he came to Nebraska was be a big man who can step out and stretch the defense, knock down three
Yeah.
pointers, and he hadn't done that consistently. He had some games, he had his moments, but he hadn't done it consistently, and he was in a bit of a shooting slump when he um going into that Ohio State game. So I think just seeing the first one go down was big for him, for his
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah.
And then he heated up. He hit a ridiculous step back later in the first half. And then
That was tough.
yeah. Yeah, lets the guy fly by him in out. That was nice. But and then in the second half, he made more threes and he just got to work down low. Like Ohio State just didn't have the bulk to keep him from getting to the rim.
No.
When he got the ball on the block, he was just getting it on the block, put the shoulder down, go to work. He ended up with 34 and 10. Just a big time performance from Rienk Mast.
Yeah. No, I saw the flyby, the in and out, step back, bang is the first highlight I had saw from that game after I finished writing on Tuesday. So I was like walking out to my car, pulled up Twitter, and I saw that, and I was like, "Oh boy!"
Yeah,
That play in particular was filthy. 'Cause, yeah, let him pump, let him fly by, and then he turned him a second time
yeah,
when he looked like he was going to drive to the bat. It was that was a. Do you think it would be a stretch to say that in this year's transfer portal, Rienk Mast might be the most important player that the Big Ten landed? I won't
it's a
say the
good
country.
question.
Um, kind of there's a lot of different fits in a lot of different places, but I guess in a more narrower scope, the Big Ten. I mean he'd have to be, right? Who would
Yeah,
this team's center be if not Rienk Mast?
yeah, because Blaze Cada hasn't played yet this year. He's
Yeah,
they'd have to actually Matar Joe, who is a dude with a lot of
yeah.
potential. But yeah, it's interesting. I was just texting with a couple friends that just last night we were trying to come up with a starting five of Big Ten players who transferred from Missouri Valley schools. We can only come up with four. Lance Jones, Marcus Damask, Ben Krikke, and Rienk Mast. We couldn't think of a fifth. That team doesn't really have a true point guard. It also only has four guys. But
Okay, let me ask you this then. On that note, could those four beat DePaul?
I don't know that I've actually watched DePaul this year.
You're not missing much. They play hard. That I can that I can say. They play hard.
But looking ahead, Nebraska has a huge stretch of schedule in front of it. It's got 4 games. 3 of them are on the road, where the Huskers have really struggled this season. It starts with at Maryland on Saturday, then Wisconsin comes to town, then at Illinois, then at Northwestern. That is
Dude,
a
that is
that is a gauntlet of a stretch. And but in uh looking at the schedule, looking at that part, looking at what comes after it, I think if Nebraska goes 2-2 in those games, the Huskers will be really sitting pretty. As far as
yeah.
tournament, and because after that, um, they got Michigan at home and then Penn State at home. That if they can make it through those 4 games, they have probably the 2 worst teams in the conference at home after that. And
Yeah. That's what I was gonna ask you. You think 2-2 is the if you can get out of that 2-2, you feel really good.
yeah, yeah.
That makes
And
sense.
I think that starts with beating Maryland on Saturday.
Yeah,
That's the weakest of those four teams they're going to play.
yeah,
It's a chance to kind of exercise those road demons that have haunted Nebraska all year long. So I think it's just a big, maybe season defining stretch. And I try not to be hyperbolic on this, but
I
that's
think so. Yeah,
yeah, it's such an opportunity to build a tournament resume over the next 4 days and just to, if you're Nebraska, put yourself in a really good position over the
yeah,
last month of the conference season.
yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, I've got the what do the Big Ten standings look like right now? Because at this
There's a
point,
real cluster in there.
yeah,
As
at this
of
point,
two nights ago, as of
we're kind
like
of
2 nights ago, 9 teams had either 3 or 4 wins. And
dude. That's yeah. I mean, we're talking about so the Huskers currently sit in fifth in the Big Ten. We're talking about Big Ten tournament seeding.
yeah,
That's the when you get to this stretch because Northwestern's right in front of them, Illinois is right in front of them, Wisconsin to top the conference, Maryland's right below them. This is the
yeah,
cluster that you have to win games in to separate yourself
yeah,
from. Um, yeah, two and two. They're 5-4 in league right now. Come out of it 7-6. You'd probably feel pretty good. I would imagine. So not as tough as a stretch for Creighton. Um, that was kind of everything that Nebraska is about to embark on is kind of what Creighton just went through.
yeah,
Um, yeah, just because of who they played in the gauntlet. They'll have another one right toward the end of the regular season, but right now is kind of the you should win games. DePaul at home, Butler at Providence, which is again just collected its first real win since Bryce Hopkins went down at the beginning of this month. At Xavier, so that'll be probably another tight one. Georgetown, Butler, and then and then they end the regular season with UConn, St. John, Seton Hall, Marquette, Nova. That is if there is a ramp up for the
yeah.
NCAA tournament, that's it. That is it. Um, so they've hit that part of the schedule where it's like a bunch of the middle of the pack teams. You could probably afford a loss in there somewhere. You'd rather not have one, but you could afford one if need be, I suppose. Because man, you're going to need to be at your best
Yeah.
effective February 20th. UConn in Omaha kind of starts that stretch to end the regular season. So, but DePaul this Saturday, pink out game. Hopefully, I think I'm going to step out in some pink. Why not?
Yeah, yeah,
I'll support the occasion.
yeah.
So hopefully everyone else does too. If I see anybody, any of our listeners, any of our readers, and they say hi and they're not in pink, tough day. I might just have to turn around and walk. No,
Yeah, yeah. You have no room for those kind of people in your life. Like just
not wear pink to a pink out.
yeah,
It's
it's the
like
kind of
Juwan Gary not
negativity
diving on
you
a
deal
loose
with.
ball. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's like Baylor Shireman not playing 40 minutes. It's like Juwan
yeah.
Gary not diving on a loose ball. I mean, what are we talking about here? Not wearing pink to a pink out.
It's the society come to.
Man, I'm telling you, it's a late January thing.
Yeah, John, that felt like a real kind of poetic way to end things. We started by talking about late January, and now here we are again. So
Uh, by the next time we do this, it'll be February, so we won't have to
it
say that
will be.
anymore.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to come up with a different
Rejoice.
bit.
Yeah, yeah. We'll be back. We'll be better.
Yes, and so with that, thank you for listening. This has been the Half Court Press podcast.